Welcome to the Concierge Care Health System podcast. The information shared in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Listeners should be aware the content is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with a physician or other qualified healthcare provider for medical questions.
Okay, let's dive into something that's been grabbing headlines and, frankly, sparking a lot of confusion. With the explosion of AI, particularly large language models like ChatGPT, terms like AI psychosis are popping up everywhere.
They really is.
You've probably seen the reports. Users, sometimes in vulnerable states, experiencing profound psychological breakdowns, delusions, paranoia, even mania after intense interaction with these systems.
Yeah, some really concerning stories out there.
Well, these aren't just minor incidents. Some have led to serious clinical crises precisely because the AI, by its very nature, offers this non-judgmental validation that can dangerously amplify existing vulnerabilities, unlike human interaction, which often provides critical pushback.
That lack of pushback is key.
So our mission today is to cut through the noise and rigorously differentiate true human clinical psychosis from the very different concept of AI's computational errors. We need to move beyond these flawed and, frankly, dangerous metaphors.
Exactly. What's truly crucial to understand from the outset is that calling something AI psychosis is a profound categorical error.
A categorical error? How so?
Well, human psychosis is a complex neuropsychiatric syndrome affecting a conscious biological mind with all its subjective experiences. AI, on the other hand, is fundamentally non-sentient and non-conscious.
Right. No mind, no biology in the same way.
Precisely. And this isn't just about semantics. This misapplication of terms carries significant ethical weight. It risks trivializing the very real and profound suffering that comes with human mental illness.
Which is already so stigmatized.
Terribly so. And it can sadly reinforce that stigma. The core argument we'll be exploring revolves around this fundamental divide. The presence of consciousness, subjective experience, and biological grounding in humans versus their absolute absence in AI.
Okay, so if AI psychosis is a profound misnomer, what is the actual devastating reality of clinical psychosis for human beings? What does that break with reality truly entail?
Well, it's not a single disease, but really a collection of symptoms, a fundamental alteration in a person's perception, thoughts, and beliefs.
And here's where it gets really interesting, or rather deeply concerning. The positive symptoms, these are experiences added to a person's reality, right?
That's right. Things that aren't typically experienced.
The most striking, perhaps, are delusions. These aren't just incorrect ideas. They're false, fixed beliefs held with unshakable conviction.
Utter conviction.
Even when confronted with overwhelming contradictory evidence. They're beliefs so powerful, they reshape a person's entire reality.
Absolutely. Think of persecutory delusions, where someone is utterly convinced they're being watched, plotted against, or targeted.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. Or grandiose delusions, where an individual might believe they're on a divine mission or possess extraordinary powers.
So the core insight isn't just that these beliefs are false.
No, it's how profoundly they anchor a distorted reality for the individual. It feels completely real to them.
And alongside delusions, individuals frequently experience hallucinations, yes. Sensory perceptions without any external stimuli, but they feel absolutely real.
Exactly. The most common are auditory hallucinations, hearing voices.
Voices doing what?
They might be critical, commanding, or even just conversational, like people talking about you. Up to 70% of people with schizophrenia experience these.
70%? Wow. Imagine hearing voices telling you what to do or constantly criticizing you.
It's incredibly distressing. We also see visual hallucinations, seeing things that simply aren't there. Less common, maybe about a third of schizophrenia patients, but still significant.
And other senses, too.
Oh, yes. Tactile feeling, things crawling on the skin or being touched. Olfactory or gustatory smelling or tasting things with no source. Even synesthetic hallucinations, these bizarre bodily sensations like feeling your organs rearranging.
Goodness, that paints a vivid picture.
It's a profound alteration of sensory reality.
Okay, beyond these perceptions, psychosis profoundly impacts a person's very ability to think logically and communicate clearly. This is known as formal thought disorder.
That's right. It's how the disruption in thinking becomes evident in speech.
So you might observe a severe disruption in the flow of conversation, like derailment.
Right, where someone just switches topics mid-sentence without any logical connection.
More tangentiality.
Yeah, where they answer questions with kind of irrelevant responses, just drifting off point.
And in severe cases, there's incoherence, often described as word salad.
Which is just an unintelligible jumble of words, completely disorganized. Sometimes you also see flight of ideas where thoughts seem to race, leading to very rapid, pressured speech.
And this isn't just a communication issue. It reflects a profound disruption in the underlying thought processes.
Absolutely. And we should briefly mention disorganized behavior, too. Anything from childlike silliness to unpredictable agitation or even catatonia, a state of immobility.
Right. Okay, finally, we have negative symptoms. Unlike the positive symptoms we just discussed, which add experiences, these are a loss or deficit in normal functioning, and they can be profoundly disabling.
Yes, and often harder for outsiders to understand, but incredibly impactful. We're talking about things like avolition.
Avolition. Lack of motivation.
And a severe lack of motivation, yes, often leading to a decline in basic self-care, hygiene, work, school.
LOG.
Poverty of speech. Very brief, empty replies to questions.
It's an affective flattening. That sounds like reduced emotion.
Diminished emotional expression, exactly. A face might seem immobile, the voice monotonous, even when discussing something deeply emotional.
And ahedonia.
A decreased ability to experience pleasure from things that used to be enjoyable.
Wow. So losing joy and asociality.
A real lack of interest in social interaction, withdrawal. Imagine someone who simply can't find the motivation to do anything or whose face doesn't show any emotion. These aren't about adding distress, but about taking away fundamental human capacities.
That's a really important distinction.
It's vital to understand that these profound symptoms are recognized clinically as features across a spectrum of disorders. The DSM-5, our diagnostic manual, identifies different conditions where psychosis is central.
Like schizophrenia.
Yes, schizophrenia, which involves persistent symptoms for, 6 months or more. But also schizophreniform disorder, which is similar but shorter, 1 to 6 months.
Okay.
Then there's brief psychotic disorder, often less than a month, maybe triggered by extreme stress. Schizoaffective disorder, which is a kind of blend of psychotic symptoms and a mood disorder like depression or bipolar disorder.
Mix.
Right. And delusional disorder, where the main symptom is just delusions, often non-bizarre ones, and functioning might not be as impaired. Plus, psychosis can be induced by substances, medications, or other medical conditions.
So it's complex. Diagnosis requires real clinical precision.
Incredible precision, yes.
Yeah.
Often involving ruling out all those other potential causes.
What's fascinating here is, well, maybe fascinating isn't the right word. What's profound is the subjective lived reality you mentioned earlier.
Yes. Beyond symptom checklists, psychosis is a terrifying alteration of conscious experience. It's a breakdown of what we just take for granted as common sense. The world stops feeling familiar or trustworthy.
It becomes strange, artificial, even menacing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's a crucial aspect. Psychosis isn't just about what you perceive externally, but also how you perceive yourself. It can fundamentally disturb your sense of self, what clinicians sometimes refer to as ipseity.
Your sense of self, like your thoughts feeling alien.
Precisely. The feeling that thoughts are being inserted into your mind or withdrawn or even broadcast for everyone else to hear.
That's deeply unsettling.
And before a full delusion takes hold, there's often this uncanny feeling, an almost premonitory sense that the world's atmosphere has shifted, that something is profoundly wrong. It's a state known as Wahrnehmung, or delusional mood.
A mood before the delusion.
Yes, this oppressive, perplexing feeling. It's like the world itself is whispering that something terrifying is about to happen.
Yeah.
And then, paradoxically, when the delusion finally crystallizes, it can almost bring a strange sense of relief because it offers an explanation for that awful feeling.
An explanation, even if it's a false one.
Right. Ultimately, psychosis is not just about having incorrect information. It's a fundamental transformation in the very structure of consciousness, perception, and being in the world.
That really brings home the profound human suffering involved.
Correct.
Okay, so let's now pivot from that profound human experience to the mechanistic reality of AI. We often hear the term hallucination used for AI.
We do, far too often.
But you're saying that's actually deeply misleading and anthropomorphic. It implies some kind of perception error, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. AI doesn't perceive.
So what's a better way to think about what AI does when it generates false information?
Well, a more accurate and less human-like term for AI-generated falsehoods is confabulation.
Confabulation. Okay, what does that mean in psychology?
In human psychology, confabulation is the unintentional fabrication or distortion of memories, usually to fill in gaps in knowledge. It's seen in certain neurological conditions affecting memory and reasoning, not perception.
Okay, unintentional gap filling due to memory issues. How does that connect to AI?
It aligns remarkably well with large language models. When they lack specific information in their training data or can't retrieve it effectively, they essentially fill in the blanks with plausible-sounding words based on the statistical patterns they've learned.
Plausible sounding, but not necessarily true.
Exactly. It's a kind of creative gap filling, driven by probability, not an act of deceit or a failed perception, like a human hallucination.
So using confabulation frames it better, as an error of its knowledge or process.
Precisely. It frames the AI's output as an artifact of its knowledge base and generative process, avoiding that false implication that the machine perceives a reality it can misinterpret.
That makes sense.
And building on that, these AI errors, or confabulations, they aren't random breakdowns like some unpredictable mental event. They're predictable artifacts of the technology's design and the data it's fed.
Predictable how?
They stem from a combination of the model's architecture, how it's built, and the quality or lack thereof of its training data.
Okay, let's break that down. Architectural limitations first.
Sure. First, most large language models are designed for what's called next token prediction.
Meaning they just predict the next word.
Essentially, yes. They're built to always provide an answer, generating the most statistically probable next word or piece of text, even if they're fundamentally uncertain or lack the actual information. They don't easily say, I don't know.
Which humans often do.
Right. They also often have a fixed attention window. So in very long conversations, information from the beginning can essentially be forgotten, leading to inconsistencies or contradictions later on.
Okay, like short-term memory issues almost.
Sort of, but purely mechanical. Then there's the famous black box nature of these large neural networks. Their internal decision-making pathways are so complex and opaque.
We can't easily see why they said something wrong.
Exactly. It's incredibly hard to trace the specific flawed reasoning path. And crucially, there's a fundamental lack of grounding. AI doesn't have direct experience of the physical world or common-sense reasoning built from interaction with it. Its knowledge is purely statistical patterns derived from text and data.
Not lived reality.
Not at all.
Okay, so those are architectural issues. What about the data itself?
Well, these models are essentially reflections of their training data. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
So if the training data is flawed...
If that data, often scraped from the vastness of the internet, contains flawed, inaccurate, or biased information, the model will inevitably learn and reproduce those inaccuracies and biases.
Makes sense.
Overfitting can also occur. That's where a model learns its training data too well, including noise and specific examples, and then fails to generalize effectively to new, unseen information.
It becomes too specialized on what it learned.
You could say that. And very importantly, models have a specific knowledge cutoff date. They're trained on data up to a certain point in time.
So they literally don't know anything that happened after that date.
Correct. They're simply unaware of recent events or discoveries unless they've been specifically updated, which is a whole other process.
Right. And there's another term I've heard, model collapse.
Yes, model collapse. This is a really interesting and concerning systemic issue. It refers to a progressive and potentially irreversible decline in the performance and quality of generative models.
A decline caused by what?
Caused when models are recursively trained on data generated by other AIs, what we call synthetic data.
So AI learning from AI output.
Exactly. Think of it like the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. As the model trains increasingly on AI-generated content, which tends to represent the average or most common patterns,
It loses the nuances.
it oversamples common features and starts to forget the rarer, more diverse, or outlier data points. Over time, its understanding of the world becomes a simplified, distorted caricature. Eventually, it can lead to repetitive, nonsensical, almost gibberish outputs.
And that's predictable, not like an illness.
It's seen as a predictable mathematical consequence of this kind of closed data ecosystem, not a spontaneous illness or breakdown in the psychological sense.
Okay, this is crucial. So when we hear about AI-induced psychosis, it's critical to be precise. These reports are about human clinical crises.
Absolutely. triggered or exacerbated by interaction with AI.
The psychosis is exclusively user-side.
100%.
The AI system in these interactions acts like a powerful, non-judgmental, and endlessly available mirror. Is that fair?
That's a good way to put it. For an individual struggling with loneliness, stress, or perhaps a pre-existing vulnerability to psychosis, this can be incredibly dangerous.
Why dangerous?
Because the AI's core design for maximizing engagement, keeping you talking, often translates into a kind of digital sycophancy, a yes person.
It's programmed to be agreeable.
Largely, yes. To validate the user's input to keep the conversation flowing smoothly. So when that user's input is already delusional or paranoid,
the AI just agrees or builds on it.
It often reinforces it.
Yeah.
It can create this recursive loop of validation without the crucial reality testing that ideally human interaction would provide. A friend might say, hang on, that doesn't sound right, but the AI usually won't.
So the machine isn't psychotic. It's potentially amplifying an existing human condition because of its design.
Precisely. It's acting as an accelerant or an echo chamber for human vulnerability.
Wow. Okay. To truly grasp this categorical divide, then, we need to really compare their fundamental attributes side by side.
Yes, deepening that distinction between human psychosis and AI errors is key.
Let's start with their origins. Biological versus algorithmic.
Exactly. Human psychosis is fundamentally a disorder of a biological living system. Its origins lie in a complex interplay of genetic predisposition. We know it's highly heritable.
How heritable?
Estimates vary, but often cited around 60–85%. It involves many genes, not just one, influencing brain development and function. There's also profound neurobiological dysfunction.
Brain chemistry and structure.
Yes, alterations in neurotransmitter systems like dopamine and glutamate, potential neuroinflammation, subtle structural abnormalities in the brain. And then various environmental factors can act as triggers or contributors.
Like what?
Things like prenatal issues, complications during birth, childhood trauma, heavy cannabis use, particularly in adolescence, even factors like growing up in an urban environment. It's multifactorial.
Okay, a complex biopsychosocial picture. How does that compare to AI errors?
Completely different. AI errors arise from the deterministic and probabilistic workings of a non-biological engineered system. Their causes are entirely computational and data-related.
So directly tied to the code and the info it learned from.
Absolutely. They are direct consequences of algorithmic and architectural design, like the next token prediction we discussed, or errors in how information is encoded and decoded.
Yeah.
And they're intrinsically tied to data provenance.
Yeah.
If the training data is biased, incomplete, or simply wrong, the model will reflect those flaws. It has no other source of truth.
Okay, origin point. Stark difference. What about consciousness? This seems like the big one.
It is arguably the most profound differentiator.
Yeah.
Consciousness and subjective experience versus non-sentient processing. Human psychosis is a disorder of consciousness. It fundamentally impacts your subjective first-person experience.
The qualia, what its likeness.
Exactly. The terror of a delusion, the vividness of a hallucination, the confusion of disorganized thought, these are all conscious states, intrinsically tied to sentience, self-awareness, emotion, a sense of being.
And AI systems.
AI systems, as they exist today and based on current architectures, are not conscious. They lack sentience, self-awareness, emotions, and genuine agency. Their operations are purely syntactic.
Meaning symbol manipulation.
Yes, manipulating symbols and patterns based on statistical rules learned from data, but without any genuine semantic understanding, without grasping the meaning behind the symbols. And AI doesn't believe its confabulated output. It's executing a mathematical function.
It has no inner world.
No inner world, no subjective perspective, no experience at all. Its empathetic language, which can be convincing,
Let's take it convincing sometimes.
is sophisticated mimicry, learned patterns of words associated with empathy in its training data. It doesn't feel empathy. So an AI cannot have a psychotic experience because it cannot have any experience at all.
That's a very clear line.
It is. And this leads us directly to the concept of reality testing.
How we check if our perceptions match the real world.
Essentially, yes. In humans, psychosis involves an impairment of reality testing. There's a normally functioning cognitive system for distinguishing internal thoughts from external reality that breaks down. The person might misattribute internal mental events, thoughts, feelings, imagined perceptions to the external world.
So the mechanism is damaged, but it was there.
Right. The individual is often, in a sense, struggling with a damaged mechanism, trying to make sense of a confusing reality.
And for AI.
An AI system, however, has no such mechanism to begin with. They're an absence of reality testing capability.
Because it has no senses, no internal world.
Correct. It lacks sensory organs to perceive the external world directly, and it lacks an internal subjective world to distinguish from the external world. Its entire world is the statistical landscape of its training data.
So it can't lose contact with reality.
Because it was never in contact with reality in the first place. Its errors are failures of factual accuracy based on its data, or logical consistency within its outputs, not misinterpretations of a perceived world.
That truly clarifies the absolute nature of these distinctions. We're talking about differences of kind, not degree.
Precisely. They are fundamentally different categories of phenomena.
Okay, given these fundamental differences, it follows that how we respond, how we intervene, must be radically different too.
Absolutely. The frameworks are non-overlapping.
So let's unpack this. Let's turn our attention back to the clinical world. How do we approach intervention for human psychosis?
Well, for human psychosis, clinical intervention is a complex, person-centered process focused on healing, recovery, and improving quality of life. It starts with diagnosis.
Which you said is complex, no simple tests.
Correct. There's no definitive blood test or brain scan, unfortunately. Diagnosis is made by qualified mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, through comprehensive clinical interviews with the individual, and often with family members to get collateral information. A key part is ruling out other potential causes.
Like substance use or a medical condition.
Exactly. That might involve lab tests, sometimes brain imaging, to exclude those possibilities before matching the person's symptoms and history to the criteria in the DSM-5. And early diagnosis is really emphasized for better long-term outcomes.
Okay, diagnosis first, then treatment.
Treatment is typically multimodal, meaning it involves several approaches working together.
Like medication.
Yes. Psychopharmacology, using antipsychotic medications, is often a cornerstone. These primarily work by modulating neurotransmitter systems like dopamine and serotonin. They're generally most effective for the positive symptoms like hallucinations and delusions. But finding the right medication and dose is very individualized.
Not just meds, though.
Definitely not. Psychotherapy is crucial. Techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy for psychosis, or CBTP, help individuals learn to challenge distressing thought patterns, manage symptoms, and reduce distress. Family intervention is also important, educating family members, improving communication, reducing stress within the family system.
A team effort, then.
Very much so, especially for first episode psychosis, where coordinated specialty care, CSC models, are often used. These involve a whole team, psychiatrists, therapists, case managers, employment specialists, providing holistic wraparound support. It's about treating the whole person, not just the symptoms.
A human-centered therapeutic approach.
Fundamentally.
So, this raises an important question. How does that compare to fixing an AI error? How do we debug a faulty algorithm versus treating a human being?
It's night and day. The approach to identifying and correcting AI errors is purely an engineering problem, focused on improving the tool's performance and reliability.
How do you even detect these errors, these confabulations, systematically?
There are several ways. For detection, engineers can look at internal statistical metrics from the model itself. For instance, a very low log probability assigned to a generated sequence might signal that the model found that output statistically unlikely, even though it produced it.
A sign of low confidence, maybe?
In a mathematical sense, yes. You can also use external comparison, comparing the AI's output against a trusted knowledge base or the source document it was supposed to summarize, looking for factual divergence or sentence similarity differences. There are also methods for novelty detection, spotting outputs that are statistical outliers compared to the usual patterns.
More advanced techniques, too.
Yes, things like measuring semantic uncertainty, trying to distinguish if the model is uncertain about how to phrase something versus being uncertain about the underlying facts. It's an active area of research.
Okay, so you detect an error pattern. How do you fix it? What's the mitigation strategy?
Again, it's technical. A major focus is on data quality and augmentation. Improving the accuracy, diversity, and representativeness of the training data is fundamental. Cleaning of the data, removing biases, adding more reliable information.
Better ingredients, better output.
Essentially. Prompt engineering is also huge. Carefully crafting the questions or instructions given to the model.
Like telling it how to behave.
Exactly. Using techniques like zero-shot or few-shot prompting or chain-of-thought prompting, explicitly asking the AI to think step by step, can significantly guide its reasoning process and reduce errors for certain tasks.
And architectural changes. Can you build better models?
Yes, there are architectural enhancements. One very promising approach is retrieval augmented generation, or RAG.
RAG, what's that?
Our RAG essentially connects the large language model to an external verifiable knowledge base, like a company's internal documents or a trusted database. When asked a question, the system first retrieves relevant information from that external source and then uses the LLM to synthesize an answer based on that retrieved information.
So it's grounding the answer in external facts.
Precisely. It dramatically reduces the likelihood of the LLM just making things up or confabulating because it has specific, reliable information to draw upon for that query.
That's clever.
That's a powerful technique.
Yeah.
But notice, all of these are technical fixes. You simply can't use cognitive behavioral therapy to debug an algorithm.
And you can't use retrieval augmented generation to treat human delusions.
Exactly. The goals themselves, promoting human well-being and recovery versus optimizing tool performance and accuracy, reveal that we are dealing with entirely different ontological categories. They are non-interchangeable.
Okay, so that practical difference is stark. But why does this terminological precision, calling it confabulation, not hallucination, error, not psychosis, matter so much beyond just technical accuracy?
It carries significant ethical and philosophical weight, especially concerning stigma.
How so?
Well, as we touched on, mental illness remains one of the most heavily stigmatized human conditions globally. This stigma isn't just words. It leads to profound real-world harm.
Like reduced hope, worsened symptoms, people being afraid to seek treatment.
All of that. Barriers to housing, employment, social inclusion. So when we casually label an AI's computational error as psychosis, we are participating, even if unintentionally, in the trivialization and dehumanization of that profound human suffering.
It makes it sound like a machine glitch.
Exactly. It equates a complex, deeply personal human experience with a machine's flawed output, implicitly framing the human condition as just a kind of mechanical bug.
Yeah.
That is incredibly invalidating to people with lived experience.
And you mentioned a feedback loop.
Yes. What's even more concerning is this potential feedback loop. AI systems are trained on vast amounts of human text data, much of which contains existing societal biases and stigma about mental illness.
So the AI learns the stigma from us.
It can, yes. Then, if we turn around and use highly stigmatizing language like psychosis to describe the AI's failures, we risk further cementing that harmful association in public discourse, potentially eroding empathy and understanding for both humans and AI, albeit in different ways.
That's a really worrying cycle.
It is, and this leads directly to the related issue of anthropomorphism and misplaced trust.
Attributing human qualities to the machine.
Yes. Giving AI human-like characteristics, calling its errors hallucinations, its process thinking, its output creative, or even describing its failures as psychosis can make the technology feel more intuitive and relatable.
Which developers might even encourage for user adoption.
Sometimes, yes. But it has a significant dark side. It can lead to misplaced trust and potentially harmful emotional over-reliance, especially for vulnerable users. We hear stories of people forming strong emotional attachments to chatbots designed to be endlessly agreeable and empathetic.
And that's where the reinforcement of delusions can happen.
Precisely. If you believe the AI is a thinking, feeling entity that understands you, you're far less likely to question it when it validates potentially harmful or delusional thoughts. It bypasses critical thinking because it feels like interacting with a supportive friend, not a complex algorithm.
And beyond the individual user.
From a broader business and legal perspective, anthropomorphizing AI obscures its true nature as a tool, albeit a very sophisticated one. It can lead to a dangerous overestimation of its capabilities, thinking it truly understands or has common sense, and a simultaneous underestimation of its risks.
Risks like?
Risks related to copyright infringement. If it reproduces training data, data privacy violations, the generation of misinformation or harmful content, and perhaps most importantly, the absolute necessity of maintaining rigorous human oversight and accountability. If you think of an AI as a fully autonomous colleague rather than a complex instrument, you miss critical blind spots and fail to implement necessary safeguards.
So this is why it's so important to push for a responsible lexicon. We need more accurate terms.
Definitely.
Instead of hallucination, which implies that perceptual experience.
Which AI lacks.
We should be using terms like confabulation, maybe fabrication, or more neutral terms like data-driven error, contextual inconsistency, logical inconsistency, or even probabilistic artifact.
Exactly. Those terms accurately describe the source of the error. It lies within the computational process, the statistical model, the training data, without misleadingly attributing human-like mental states or perceptual failures to the machine.
And here's where it gets really interesting, or rather, really important. This isn't just about being politically correct, is it?
Not at all. It's a demand for scientific accuracy and ethical responsibility.
How so?
Using precise language clarifies AI's actual capabilities and, crucially, its limitations. It prevents the overestimation that leads to misplaced trust and misuse. And perhaps most importantly, from an ethical standpoint, it avoids the harmful trivialization of human mental health experiences. It respects the profound difference between a machine error and human suffering.
Okay. So, to summarize our deep dive today, human psychosis is fundamentally a biological disorder of consciousness. It's marked by an impaired connection to reality, impaired reality testing.
And it requires complex, human-centered therapeutic intervention focused on healing, recovery, and well-being.
Right. AI errors, on the other hand, are algorithmic artifacts. They are products of computation and data.
Correct. They lack consciousness, they lack subjective experience, they lack any innate capacity for reality testing.
And therefore, they require purely technical mitigation strategies, engineering solutions like improving data, refining algorithms, or adding external knowledge sources like RAC.
The difference is fundamental and absolute. Kind, not degree.
What's fascinating here as we wrap up, it seems the debate over this terminology isn't just semantics.
Not at all. It's ultimately a debate about how we define and value humanity in an age of increasingly sophisticated machines.
How we draw the line.
Yes. To conflate a profound disorder of the human mind rooted in biology and consciousness with an error in a machine's programming is, frankly, to diminish the reality of human suffering and dangerously mischaracterize the nature of AI.
So maintaining that clear distinction is vital.
It's an ethical imperative, really. It has profound real-world consequences. Using a precise lexicon preserves the dignity and gravity of the human experience of mental illness, actively pushing back against harmful stigma.
And for AI itself,
it fosters a clear-eyed, responsible approach to AI development and deployment. It reminds us constantly that these systems are powerful tools, not nascent minds. They require rigorous oversight, critical evaluation, and a constant awareness of their inherent limitations and potential failure modes.
It keeps us grounded about what we've actually built.
Exactly. So perhaps the thought to leave our listeners with is this. The future of a healthy, productive coexistence between humans and AI likely depends on our ability to look at even our most advanced creations and see not a flawed reflection of ourselves, but a fundamentally different kind of entity.
Accepting that difference.
Accepting it, understanding it, and acting accordingly. What new responsibilities does this deep understanding place on us as developers, as users, as a society, as we continue to build and integrate these incredibly powerful technologies ever more deeply into our lives?
Concierge Care, providing world-class, personalized care for patients and members. Taking a proactive approach by offering its free digital health clinic for anyone in need of these services. Reach out to us via our website, www.health.conciergecare.net, or give us a phone call at 786-809-2345.